This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. We got to hear from Jared Verse speaking for the first time as a Cleveland Brown about how he feels about the trade, how he's approaching this. And look, all my feelings about not having Myles Garrett on this team aside, I'm pretty excited about the things that I hear, especially the extracurricular things that I hear about Jared Verse, right? You're hearing a lot about his leadership, which, I think Nathan Zagura made a point, and I think this is something I'm going to cover in a video I'm going to drop maybe later this week. But he made a point about this being a young team and maybe somebody who, is a little bit older but accomplished like Jared Verse, who's that more willing to step into that mantle of the leader in the vocal leader part of it that Myles was like never really willing to ever do. Maybe that's something that will be useful for this young defense. You hear great things about his character. Everybody who seemingly has interacted with Jared Verse in one way or the other, from beat reporters to his former teammates, seems to have nothing but great things to say about Jared Verse. And that's a really great place to be at, right? Like when you think of the alternative, right, which is the rumors that the Browns were potentially going to trade Myles to Philadelphia for Jalen Carter, right? And if they would have brought in Jalen Carter, yes, Jalen Carter's super talented. You can make the argument that Jalen Carter is more talented than Jared Verse. It can go back and forth. Jared plays edge. Jalen plays defensive tackle. You can have those arguments if you want. But what's not arguable is that, like, Jared Verse's character is seemingly higher than what we've seen from Jalen Carter throughout his pro career, right? It seems like Jared Verse is somebody that the Browns, much like Spencer Fano, would deem a orange dot guy, right? The highest character grade they can give. And that is something, right? On top of obviously being a good player, right? You could be a great character guy, but if you're not a good football player, it's not going to matter. But on top of being a good player, we talked about that in my film breakdown. But let's listen to Jared Verse and hear what he has to say about joining the Browns and hear where his mind is.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise. I loved LA. I love the coaches, the organization, my teammates, everybody a part of it, the staff, the fans. I love the whole vibe of LA, Los Angeles, the Rams, and it was upsetting. I was upset for a good little bit of time. But when you're an athlete, you understand the nature of business. Everybody does what they think is best for their business, and that's the situation that I'm in. I'm happy to be a part of the Browns. I'm happy that they believed in me and they were able to make that trade and bring me here. Be with my teammates, be with everybody here. And I truly do believe in everybody in the locker room. But it was upsetting at first. But you got two choices: that you can either work or you can give up. And I ain't never been a quitter.
Been here even just for a little bit. You've gone through a practice. You've met some of the guys. Does that help you maybe get your head turned around about this when you see sort of the energy and kind of the juice that's going on out there?
Oh yeah, they're alive out there. They're moving fast. Everybody, specifically the defense, obviously that's what I'm focusing on. The D-line was moving really well. The DBs are locked in on everything. The linebackers are making their calls very quickly. That's giving us time to get set. It was alive out there, and I feel very confident in us.
So that's one thing to point out, right? Jared Verse was out there day one. Like, that's sending a message. That's sending a direct message and a tone to everybody of what Jared Verse is here to do and how he sees himself, right? He did not have to be out there practicing the same day he does his intro press conference. I mean, Myles just got introduced in Los Angeles, right? And I think they directly asked Myles, like, hey, when are you going to be at practice? And he said, we'll find out, right? He left it as a mystery, which, again, when you're Myles Garrett, you can do stuff like that when you have the successful track record that Myles has. Like, nobody can question how you go about your business in the offseason. Obviously, he's figured something out for himself. But Jared Verse clearly has a different approach. And, it's kind of setting the message early that this is not somebody you're going to have to worry about how committed they are to the team, that this is not somebody you're going to have to worry about if they're going to be at voluntary or mandatory camp. This is not somebody who's going to have you in the headlines because their commitment to you is wavering one way or the other, which I think is a message that's going to resonate well with Cleveland fans in general, right? Because we're kind of used to star players coming here, and the assumption is that we're not going to get the best effort from those guys, or they might take a little off because they only came here for money. That's kind of the perception with Deshaun Watson for a lot of fans, is that he's only really came here for the money and really didn't care about anything else. So Jared Verse being out there practicing the first day he gets in, getting into not pads, but putting his helmet on, putting in a little bit of work. He did individual drills. I do think sends a message. And as far as his answer to begin this press conference, I think it's a solid answer from Jared Verse. I think it's an honest answer from Jared, right? He'd be sitting here lying if he didn't if he didn't say anything about leaving LA is tough. This is a guy who built his life out there, was a star out there, saw the team almost achieve great heights out there. And then you're coming to a team that's rebuilding. It's a bit of a mind change, right? And he's not familiar. Well, I don't know how familiar he is with Cleveland. He's from Dayton, but that don't mean that you spent much time in Cleveland if you're familiar with Ohio. Dayton all the way over there, right? Dayton is basically part of Indiana, or close to Indiana, right? So it's closer to Indiana than it is to Cleveland. You know what I mean? So I don't know what his relationship is with the city of Cleveland, how much time he spent here, but I would bet he's probably very unfamiliar with it. But he seems like the kind of guy that he's going to be where his feet are. He's going to do his best wherever he is. And that's the kind of vibe you get from him. And that might be what made him so attractive juxtaposition to Miles, right? If you're Andrew Barry, where it's Miles is a generational, once-in-a-lifetime player, and Jared Verse is probably not going to be that level of player for you, but you might be in a situation where it's you can't have Myles Garrett, but you can have a great player who you don't have to question whether they want to be here or not.
A guy that was out there on the field talking to you a lot, he said that you guys were just kind of talking, not even just football stuff, but just getting to know each other off the field too. Have you felt kind of that welcome presence early on to the Cleveland Browns organization?
Oh yeah, 100%. Everybody I see, quickly introduces themselves. I'm terrible with names, so I have to ask people's names a couple times. But it's good. It feels like home. Like you come in, everybody's saying hello to you, getting to know you, wants to know about this about you, where you're from, and it feels good here. I'm sorry, you said what?
For this defense, I guess, how do you see that, and especially as you go from 3-4 to 4-3 here?
Oh yeah, no, this is an attacking front, and that's kind of my style. I'm very attacking. I want to get to it. I want to, have a defined situation, just be able to do my thing every time without having to think too much or without having to slow down and read keys. And it is exactly that. I like it a lot.
Yeah, he's going to like this. He's going to like getting out and attacking. And it's not really an adjustment. I know it's technically 3-4 to 4-3. It's not, though. It's really not. You look at the tape, he's playing 4-3 edge most of the time out there in Los Angeles. We just did a breakdown looking at all his run stops, looking at all his pressures on dropbacks over 2.5 seconds from last year. He's basically a 4-3 edge there. Stands up, lines up a little wide, but that's exactly what he's going to be asked to do in Cleveland. I think the difference between what he was asked to do in LA versus what he was asked to do and what he's going to be asked to do in Cleveland is, one, Cleveland wants you to attack more, right? So the big philosophy with Cleveland, and the part of the reason why the misdirection kills us so much, is the first instinct that a defense like Cleveland wants for its defensive line is attack, is get downhill, right? That's the Browns' philosophy. I've talked about this with Jim Schwartz. It doesn't seem like it's going to be changing with Mike Rutenberg. But the Browns' philosophy is we'll give up a chunk play on a misdirection every once in a while if you can get it. But we're going to be so dominant when we attack that we're going to get you behind the sticks eventually and force you to punt, which has been a successful strategy for the Cleveland Browns defense. And, Jared Verse, he's not going to be asked to kind of be patient in his plan. They're just going to say, hey, get downhill. They're going to give him space. He's going to be able to convert speed to power, and he's going to be able to get to the quarterback or get to the point of attack without really thinking, right? That's what the Browns want their defensive linemen to do, is just go downfield, and they'll live with the consequences of that. And I think Jared Verse, he seems very excited about the idea. And that's the one thing about the Browns defense, man. Defensive linemen love playing in those kind of defenses because it's exactly what you are trained to do. It's exactly what feels natural to a big defensive end like Jared Verse, who gets a ton of pressure already, right? About 100 pressures according to Pro Football Focus, has him at 100 pressures. The pressure stats change depending on what website you are, but top 5 in pressures, no matter how you look at it. He's going to really like playing in this system. We'll continue this video, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game is going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. All right, let's continue to hear what Jared Verse had to say in his introductory press conference.
You were the key to this whole trade, and the Browns were not going to make this trade and part with Myles Garrett unless they could get you here. I mean, what does that, say about how they feel about you?
Yeah, I feel like that's a testament to not only me, but, my family, how hard we work and everything like that. I feel like hard work never fails you. And to know that, that this wasn't going to go through if I wasn't a part of it, it's good to know that. Like, that was probably the biggest fact that, brought some sunshine into this whole situation for me. I saw that. I was like, yeah, they want me. And it was cool to know that.
So, Andrew Berry has taken a lot of flack for his press conference yesterday from some people. But part of the reason Andrew says the stuff that he says at these press conferences isn't necessarily always for our benefit, right? Like, I noticed yesterday, and then I did a video on it, how much the Browns were doubling down on the Jared Verse stuff, right? How they were making it clear that, from their perspective, you could believe it or not, but I'm just repeating what the Browns said, what Andrew Berry, who's responsible for this trade, and what came out of his mouth, right? He said that there was no trade request, that they weren't forced to do it, and that they did this because of Jared Verse. Now, a lot of people disagree with that being the reason for this trade, right? A lot of people think that Myles wanted out. They had to make a trade. This is the trade they made, right? Which sounds very believable. I don't have a hard time believing that that's what happened with the Browns. But from what they said publicly, that Jared Verse was the reason why. Part of the reason they would want to say that publicly, maybe one, to save face, but two, because they know Jared Verse is listening, right? They go out there and go, well, it's a consolation. That's probably not going to make Jared Verse feel great. But if they go out there and they emphasize that this trade was about Jared Verse, one, that pumps more confidence into the fan base about Jared Verse, and two, Jared Verse sees that and goes, okay, I'm not just here because they had to get rid of Myles. I'm here because they wanted me. They saw this as an opportunity to get me on the team, not necessarily I'm a throw-in a trade for a large star, which could also be the perception. So when you listen to these press conferences, understand that the audience isn't always you, right? The message isn't always for you. The message could be for the locker room. The message could be for certain people in the press. The message could be for certain players, but the reason they're saying the things they are isn't always easy to pinpoint.
How exciting is that potential pairing for you?
Man, that boy can fly. Nah, he can work. I like that a lot. I like knowing that behind me that I don't got much to worry about. If something, I can play freely because I don't have to worry if something gets by me. he's going to be able to handle that. He's going to be able to clean everything up. So now that's the exciting factor of it.
So yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people have been talking about, right? The Browns have the last 2 defensive rookie of the years. Who knows if Emmanuel McNeil-Warren plays this year? Some people feel like he might be able to get his name in that contention, and that would be certainly something if the Browns could have that kind of stacked on top of each other, plus Mason Graham, plus all the other talent that they have. But yeah, this is a very talented young defense. It's always interesting when like you hear other NFL players talk about Carson Schlesinger, because like everybody kind of understands how good he is and how special he is at his position. But yeah, I think that combination there, Jared Verse, Carson Schlesinger, and Mason Graham, that trifecta, that's going to be the new core of this defense, and we're going to see how far those guys can take us for sure.
You've already, started your career really, really well. Just how do you, I guess, deal with coming in here, maybe not replacing him, but like, you're the guy that they traded him for, and just, what's your mentality coming in here, maybe trying to fill those shoes as best as you can?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to fill anyone's shoes. Miles, he's a size 13, Nikes, whatever they are. I'm a size, 13 and a half, size 14 Jordans. Like, everybody's different. I'm not here to fill his shoes. I'm here to bring my own. I buy my own. I'm here to work, and I'm here to be the best version of me. The best version of me is going to be the best defensive player in the league. And the best defensive player in the league is going to play for the best defense in the league. And that's why I make myself testament to.
So that's his answer to, how you're going to live kind of having to deal with being in that shadow of, Myles Garrett, which is a tough shadow to be in. You know what I mean? Right? I think I brought this up, right? It's kind of like being asked to be the running back that had to replace Jim Brown. But somebody pointed this out in my comment section, and credit to him. Leroy Kelly replaced Jim Brown, and Leroy Kelly was really, really good, right? And that might be the case with Myles Garrett, where, Myles is gone. Not going to have Myles again, but we could have somebody really good fill that void, and that's the best possible scenario you can end up in if you're Cleveland. So, yeah, Jared looks like he's looking forward to, trying to carve his own legacy here in Cleveland. And I do think there's a possibility here that he's going to be more of a fan favorite than Myles was here, right? I don't know if he reaches the heights that Myles does. That's a hard thing to put on anybody. But Myles wasn't universally loved within the fan base in the way that you would assume he would be based on his play. There was always a level of uneasiness with some fans with Myles. Not myself. Myles, my favorite player on the team. But, the not showing up the OTAs stuff, the not wanting to be a vocal leader, it's always been fodder for sports radio talk shows in the negative of Myles, right? He's always had his detractors in this city, where somebody like Jared Verse is not going to really be vulnerable to that. The only thing he's going to be vulnerable to is the fact that he's not Myles Garrett. But I don't know how long people are going to be willing to hold that against him if he goes out there and demonstrates that he's going to be a good player, that he's going to be able to live up to whatever contract he gets, and that he's going to be a leader, and he's going to bring off-the-field value to this team, to the locker room culture. If he establishes himself like that, he could be loved in the same way that like Nick Chubb was loved in this city. And that could, mean a completely different vibe for this team. So, you're not going to replace the talent of Myles, but Jared Verse is going to be able to do some things that maybe Myles wasn't willing to do. And I think that is going to change how the city feels about Jared Verse. You know what I mean? So that's something I think we should keep an eye on that's going to be interesting.
You want to be yourself out here. So what is the first thing that Browns fans need to know about you? What do you want them to know about the player, the person that's coming in to their city?
Yeah, I'm about a lot of things. I'm a big family person. I love my family. I love my friends. I care about, the people that are close to me more than anything. But the one thing I hold above all, besides God, because obviously God's above all, is work. Work is the most important thing to me. All I care about is lifting. All I care about is running. All I care about is how I can get faster, how I can get this step a little bit smaller, how I can, translate this to the field. That's all I care about. And all I care about is being the best me. That's all that matters.
I feel like perhaps there might be something to be said for kind of coming in here when the foundation of this team is being built. All you guys are so young. This is the new core of a team that is probably going to be on the rise. Is there something to be said for that maybe over a really established team? How do you feel about that situation?
Yeah, no, I feel great about it. When you go into a younger team and a younger situation, a lot of people their heads are all over the place. Some people are talking too much. Some people don't take this seriously, don't take that seriously. That's not the problem here. Like, the problem here is everybody wants to work too much. Like, hey, slow it down. Like, hey, let's figure out the little techniques of the stuff. Like, everybody here is like so focused, driven, and so wanting to be a best version of themselves. And I think that's such a testament to just the new coaching staff and the new foundation that everyone's about to lay down.
All right, so that was Jared Verse's introduction to Cleveland. That's a very good introduction. Very good. Like, I don't know how you can watch that video, how you can watch that press conference and not feel better about that trade after that, right? Even if you hated the trade, even if you hated the trade more than I did, even if you're the biggest Miles fan in the world, like, I think it's pretty hard to watch that press conference and be upset at what you're watching. You know what I mean? Actually, the end of that press conference where he's talking about the work ethic and how he wants to get into it. I mean, you hear incredible things about this guy's work ethic and everything else there that he brings to the table. Already speaking highly of the culture, already speaking highly of what the coaching staff is doing, everything else around that. It's funny. He does the little things that Miles didn't do. Obviously, Miles does some big things that not anybody in the NFL history has been able to do. But I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that. I think a lot of people are going to like Jared Verse. And he's going to become a fan favorite if his play can really hit that leap, especially if he becomes like a 10, 12 sack a year guy, which I think is very much in the cards for him. I think he can even get to a 15 or 18 sack season at some point in his career. I think that he's going to become one of the big fan favorites of this franchise, and one of the pieces that people really cite as the foundation culture building of the locker room. It kind of reminds me, because sometimes when players get traded to Cleveland, right, you can tell from that intro press conference whether they're going to be a fit in this city or not because of how they go about business, right? There are the Nick Chubbs of the world, the Jarvis Landrys of the world, who just fit like a glove in Cleveland, and the fan base embraced them on day one, and everything was all up. And then you have, like Odell Beckham, right, who didn't say anything bad about Cleveland, but you could tell that his personality just wasn't really a match with what people want from a star player in Cleveland, right? People kind of want the star players in Cleveland to sound like Jared Verse and to talk like Jared Verse, which is to say Jared Verse got up there and started talking about work. And that's always going to fly with a Cleveland fan base, right? A blue-collar, hard-working fan base like the Browns. So that's, I think, something that's a really good sign. You get all the good signs from his press conference, and regardless of what you think about the Myles Garrett trade, you got to be happy that the big centerpiece of this trade is a young player that feels like he fits what the organization is trying to build like a glove, but also, fits the city like a glove. And I think, again, once we get out of the framework of him being a part of a massive trade for Myles Garrett and just get to the point to where we can appreciate Jared Verse, I think we're really going to like what we see there and be able to appreciate him more and more as time goes on. I think talked about the same thing happening with Mason Graham, where, his first year, people are talking a lot about Tatora McMillan or, Travis Hunter, what the Browns could have had instead of what Mason Graham is. But I think as more time goes on, we're going to appreciate Mason Graham more and more and more, to the point to where he does become one of the favorite players of this fan base. And I think Jared Verse, the more distance he gets from this Myles Garrett trade, and the more we just get to evaluate Jared Verse as Jared Verse, I think we're gonna love what we see. You know, he seems like he has his head on straight. He has the right mindset for this city.